Speaking of using and throwing away, I wanted to talk about AOC and her relationship to the modern day left. This is her speech from the DNC, everybody. This is a really short clip because I don't give a fuck about anything she has to say besides this. This was humiliating and led to responses from all kinds of people across the board. Ilhan Omar, but also Ana Kasparian, who we're going to give a rare set of flowers to shortly. But do you have anything to add before we hear from AOC, Gavin?
I mean, this was super disappointing, and I'm glad to see Ilhan Omar and others quickly calling her out. But yeah, super disappointing from AOC.
She is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home.
So many people pointed out after that you don't really work tirelessly for a ceasefire if you're America and you are in charge of sending all the weapons. You just say, hey, man, no more weapons. Boy,
yeah.
What a long day at work. It's kind of like when Gavin and I come on here and we're like, oh, it's a really long day of sitting next to my best friend and chatting with the internet. Oh, man, that was real tough. That's how we would do a ceasefire. We would pick up the phone and, Joe Biden would say, yeah. Maybe. That's what happens, right? We're out of tomorrow. Maybe. Ceasefire now. And that would be it. That would be all that had to happen. Bibi would get a translator, somebody who is also geriatric and, can decipher the marble mouth talking of Joe Biden at this late stage in the game. But yeah, pretty disappointing shit.
Yeah, it's also like, we can all see with our own eyes that very clearly Kamala currently is not focused on working tirelessly for a ceasefire. She's working on getting herself elected. She's campaigning her ass off, going around the country from Atlanta to Milwaukee to Detroit to Chicago, running for president. Clearly, no, she's not engaged in diplomacy day in and day out right now. So, I mean, it's just obviously inaccurate. It would have been one thing if AOC had said, like, once elected president, Kamala will begin working tirelessly for a ceasefire, but like clearly that's not what's happening right now. So it just rung very hollow, and specifically with the way the uncommitted movement is being treated at the DNC, I think that she received swift and brutal backlash, including from her own squad colleague Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can play that clip from Ilhan here in a second. It's really short, but I also wanted to hear from Ana Kasparian, somebody that we've obviously had massive disagreements with on this show over the last maybe 18 months, 24 months, right? But it was honestly really refreshing to just see a moment of pure unity on, the internet left. We're saying, obviously, we want Donald Trump out. Obviously, we want change. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement going around, but the way that the Democratic Party has chosen to handle the situation in Gaza, the absolute barbarism, the cold-heartedness, the sterility, and just the nauseating disregard for human life and human suffering, unacceptable to all of us. And I think that this is the perfect time for us to unify, which is why we wanted to make sure that we took time on this podcast to, give Ana some flowers. This was a difficult thing to share. This is a point in history that I'm not super familiar with. So I was glad that she, came out and gave a personal anecdote. I mean, her own grandmother was born in Israel because of an ethnic fucking cleansing in Armenia.
I care deeply about that issue. Okay. It has to do with ancestral reasons of what my ancestors went through. I've never shared this on the show. I know I've shared it on social media once, and it's because I don't want people to think that I have like some ridiculous bias that's informing, how I feel about what's currently going on in Gaza. It's just brutal. It's immoral. It's wrong. And innocent people are getting killed. And I just want it to stop. That's it. But, the Armenian genocide happens, and Armenians were forced on a death march to Syria. And so after the genocide, a lot of Armenians ended up settling in various Arab countries. Okay. And on my mom's side, maternal grandmother was born in Haifa. She was born in Haifa in 1937. And growing up, I would hear stories. Like my grandma unfortunately died when I was 2 weeks old. So I never got to have those conversations.
I did not know that
firsthand. But she would have the conversations with my mom, and me and my mom, growing up, we would have conversations about the Palestinian people and what they were like and how welcoming and loving and kind they were. how they didn't treat Armenians who settled, at that time, it was in Israel. I mean, it's 1937 when my grandmother was born, but how they didn't treat Armenians like the others, even though Armenia was the first Christian nation. So you have Christians coming into an area where you have, Arabs, some of whom are Christians themselves, but the majority of whom are Muslims. And they didn't see Armenian Christians as less than. They didn't see them as a threat. They welcomed them. They protected them. And I so much shame that Palestinians did that for my family. And I live in a country that has a government that's brutalizing them, that's aiding and abetting in the slaughter of their children. And it makes me so sick. So yeah, and
and that's where the clip ends. They cut it again and it plays her.
Was that in direct response to the AOC comments?
That was directly in response to AOC saying that she was working tirelessly for a ceasefire. Ana Kasparian reiterates that the comments made her sick because she knows, as well as AOC knows, that that's not the case. And so getting up on stage and lying,
it's running cover.
100%. It was despicable. And I don't know. It's a new low for AOC, frankly. She's just gone full partisan. I don't know. Unfortunately, there are still some squad members, as you mentioned earlier, Gavin, who are still up here fighting the good fight. We've got this clip from Ilhan Omar queued up. But yeah, what was your reaction to that from Ana Kasparian?
I mean, I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful story, and even some history I wasn't 100% aware of, as far as the Armenian refugees that were accepted by the Palestinian people. I mean, it's a great historical anecdote in a sense that really is sort of pushing back on this line, this disgusting racist line you often hear from mainstream media and Zionists, which is that, like, Muslim countries and Arab populations, they're inhospitable to people from other religions. They're inhospitable to people from other cultures. They just, want to institute Sharia law and kick out everyone that doesn't follow their exact religious dictations and stuff like that, right?
That's a great point.
So this story, I think, really provides a counter example that pushes back on that, because obviously that's racist and obviously that's not true. And there is, of course, cultures and countries that are theocracies and that aren't accepting of different lifestyles, but to generalize and paint with a broad brush and say that all Palestinian people hate Christians or they hate Jews, it's not true, and it's historically inaccurate. So I am really glad that Ana shared that, and it was just touching on a personal level to hear her, even though we disagree a lot with Ana, to hear her talk about her family and heritage in such a inspiring way.
Absolutely. And let's hear also from Ilhan Omar, who joined the chorus of people who were just deeply, deeply disgusted and perturbed by AOC's abandonment of the Palestinian cause.
Ask yourselves, how does our Secretary of State travel 11 times?
Ilhan looking like a badass, too.
Yeah, I was about to say she's kind of slaying there.
Right? I'm like, this is a good look. You take the aviators from Joe and don't give them back.
Begging for an end to a situation that we truly have continued to provide the bombs and the weapons that are creating that situation. How do we allow, where is our patriotism? Where is our dignity? How do we allow our Secretary of State to go into Israel, say we are close to securing a ceasefire, now for the 11th time, to leave for Egypt, only for Bibi Netanyahu to have a press conference right after him and say, we are not taking a deal that ends this war? How are we not ashamed that that is the humiliation that our administration's representatives are faced with? It is not only the hypocrisy of saying we are a country that cares about human rights. It is not just the hypocrisy of saying we care about the rule of law. It is not just the hypocrisy of saying we respect international law. But it's also the humiliation. We are the most powerful nation, supplying billions of dollars to a country that is waging genocide against people who have been occupied, who have faced apartheid, who have been displaced.
And then we've got one more from Ilhan Omar.
just
which he
stop sending
references AOC directly.
the weapons. It is that simple. So if you really wanted a ceasefire, you just stop sending the weapons. It is that simple. So if you really
So, there's no tireless efficacy towards a ceasefire. You just stop. And that was clearly a swipe at AOC after her speech at the DNC.
Yeah, I really appreciate that from Ilhan. It is pretty sickening to see people like AOC just gaslighting everyone and oh yeah, they're working tirelessly. They're listening. They care. Clearly fucking not. I mean, clearly fucking not. They're not even allowing a Palestinian American to speak at the DNC, which was the one request of the uncommitted movement. And by the way, they were allowing the DNC to vet the speech beforehand. They were going to give them the speech that the Palestinian American was going to give and say, yeah, there's not going to be anything crazy in here. We're not going to, go off and say genocide Joe or Holocaust Harris or like that's not what the speech was going to be. It was just going to be a totally normal speech. But even that was too much. There's another
and here
humiliating.
Yeah, we've got this AOC not only after she's running cover for the Kamala Harris administration, now she's going to run cover for the IDF. Did you have anything to add about this one?
Yeah, I mean just another disgusting misstep from AOC. I don't know what the hell she thinks she's doing.
Yeah, I thought this was great commentary from Mike Preisner. If anybody doesn't follow Mike Preisner, he does tremendous work with the Empire Files. Abby Martin's husband, former veteran, great peace activist. But he says, however, he died, killed by fellow panicked troops, hitting his head while hiding, or caught dead to rights by a prisoner in the concentration camp he was guarding. The only reason his body is being held is that as leverage to free Palestinian civilians from Israel's mass rape dungeon. That is who AOC is aligning herself with by running cover for the Kamala Harris administration. We have literally watched on camera, guys, men being raped with steel rods by the IDF, by the Israeli government. And then when they were beginning to look into the weaponization of just brutal sexual assault against Palestinian prisoners, there was a January 6th style riot in Israel to demand that they had the right to dehumanize and humiliate these individuals by any measure they pleased. Okay, no end to the barbarism, no end to the cruelty. It's sadistic. It's fucked up. And the fact that AOC is out here running cover for it and taking pictures with these assholes makes my blood boil, man.